Knock on wood. Don't walk under any ladders, and whatever you do, don't open any umbrellas indoors. Because for the first time in a long time, and thanks to Etsy's new CEO, handmade sellers may finally be getting the spotlight that they deserve on the platform that was once their home. And today, I'm sharing everything that we know so far. In case you're new here, my name is Starla, founder of the Handmade Alpha Academy for Etsy sellers and manager at erank.com, Etsy's most popular SEO tool. And it's no secret that over the years, Etsy has lost touch with its handmade roots. In fact, much of the decline that we've seen over the years in terms of Etsy traffic can be directly correlated to the rise of dropshipping culture, which, for the record, is not the same as POD. That's an important distinction because while POD is allowed on Etsy, dropshipping a bunch of random junk that you did not make or design is not allowed. And if you've been subscribed for a while, you may actually remember our massive Keep Etsy Human movement that gained quite a bit of traction and actually did foster some positive change on the platform at the time. But it still felt like we were fighting a losing battle as Etsy stocks began to plummet and Etsy funneled more and more money into out-of-touch advertising efforts that did nothing for the platform, including an $8 million Super Bowl ad as well as whatever the heck this was.
There's people in the cake! It's a people cake!
And this is insane because the thing that made Etsy popular in the first place was the ability to connect and support small independent artists and sellers. At one time, Etsy highlighted seller stories and built advertising around the overall handmade nature of the platform. But as the years went by, their then CEO, Josh Silverman, continuously proved to the community that he was more interested in their investors. I wish I could remember the exact investors report, so I will probably misquote this a bit, but during one of their quarterly reports, a representative of Wells Fargo actually questioned Josh on the potential negative financial impact of removing dropshippers from the platform after Etsy announced a tighter crackdown on enforcement efforts. Because the investors don't care about what makes Etsy special and unique and user-friendly, and since the end of the pandemic, we've seen exactly what this mindset has done to the health of the platform as a whole. In fact, anytime I get YouTube comments from Etsy shoppers, they cite that they can never find what they're looking for on Etsy, and that the platform is now comparable to sites like Temu. Even worse, when I get comments from sellers on my trend videos like the one that I published last week, they often ask me questions like, where do I source these handmade products? And then they get mad at me when I tell them that they should be making these items. There are so many places to sell sourced, drop-shipped items online. So many. Can creatives please just have this one single space, please? But enough of that because it gets my blood boiling. The main point that I'm trying to make is that we may be finally seeing a shift in the Etsy ecosystem as of January when Josh Silverman stepped down and new CEO Kruti Patel Goyal stepped in. Now, obviously, I've been very critical of Josh over the years as someone who's been selling on Etsy since way before they ever went public. And because of this, tons of you have asked me what I think of the new CEO. But realistically, we need to remember that meaningful change takes time. I'm always cautiously optimistic about big changes on Etsy, and like every other change, it may be several quarters before we feel any impactful change in our own shops. However, that doesn't mean the groundwork isn't already taking place. Last month, Etsy began experimenting with 2 new badges on our listings. One called Crafted with Care, which I personally haven't seen in search, and one called High Craftsmanship, which I do currently see on my desktop when searching, but not on mobile or my tablet. Etsy has stated that these new badges are experimental, so not everyone will see them right away. But what I love most about these badges is that Etsy is using them to collect data on how shoppers interact with items that are clearly labeled as handmade. And assuming that shoppers want to see more handmade items in search, this is a good sign that Etsy will soon be making more strategic decisions to showcase the things that put Etsy on the map to begin with. Not to mention, when searching on my desktop, I also noticed that for specifically handmade keyword searches, such as pottery mug, most of the top-ranking items are those that currently hold high craftsmanship badges. Now, obviously, this may heavily depend on my own personalized search experience and isn't necessarily indicative of these listings getting a higher search ranking. However, it would make sense that Etsy would be ranking items like these higher in search for queries that are handmade in nature, such as pottery mug versus, say, a cat mug that could technically be POD without requiring human hands to create. And that's not to say that other spaces like vintage, POD, and digital won't also see their time in the spotlight. It just means that Etsy's testing. They're trying to rediscover what it is that their customers want and what will bring them back to the good graces of their primary customer base. And that's a great thing, because it may mean better personalized matching and search, better product labeling, and possibly more badges for other industries as well. And guys, as the science and data focused channel, this is of course all speculative. All we know right now for sure is that Etsy has tanked in traffic over the last few years. Etsy shareholders were very unhappy about it, and so Etsy appointed a new CEO. And that since she was appointed, Etsy is testing new badges to, in their words, run experiments to better understand what information is helpful to buyers and how it impacts their shopping experience. However, from an analyst's perspective, and as someone who has watched Etsy through every evolution of their business lifespan, I can personally say that I'm the most optimistic that I've been in a long time. Cautiously optimistic, but optimistic all the same. Now, in the meantime, let me know if you're seeing any of these badges in your own Etsy search results, or if you're seeing them on your listings. As of right now, we don't know how Etsy's choosing to assign these badges, and I've certainly seen some beautifully handcrafted items that don't have these badges, but again, it'll probably be a while before Etsy shares more about them. Until next time, Pookie.